after age 50, do you think people need to think differently about life, about money?
I'm going to speak for I'm over that age. So yes. Because here's where a lot of people fall into some situations. And you have people that are having children later in life now. So this is becoming even a bigger issue in my opinion. I have one child that's left to still hit the college ranks. The other two are one is finished, the other is about to be done. So you're in a similar situation. My point of that is think about what's happening when you reach maybe the age of roughly 50, if you have a family. Um, Now there's multiple factors here, but I'm just talking if you have a family. You possibly have college age children. So there's larger expenses there that you haven't had to account for in the past, outside of the normal expense you have with a family. Then you might have weddings that are cropping up. And at the same time, you're trying to put enough away to be able to retire. And that window of retirement is very small now because you're over the age of 50. How do you make all those things happen? And now going to this inflationary state that we were just talking about, you now have a situation where how are you getting more aside? How are you preparing yourself for that retirement phase of your life and have all these other phases that are happening at the exact same time? Now, if you don't have a family, if you're single or if you're just married and you don't have children, I still believe there needs to be a shift in thought process when you reach certain ages because the light is much closer at the end of that tunnel in terms of retirement. In terms of people always saying taking chances and being risky with their money when they're younger because you have that time factor, meaning you have time in your favor because you if you lose, you have time to make it up. That's kind of the mantra or the mode there. I don't necessarily agree with that in general. I think you never get the time back, but that's a whole different conversation. You don't have time to make up these losses when you're in your 50s and you're sneaking up to retirement. You need to be potentially more conservative and trying to protect that money, but at the same time looking for an avenue that can give you payouts. That this becomes the major factor. You've heard me say this many times. I don't care how much money you have. I want to know how much money you can spend because that there's a major difference there. And what I mean by that is the spending aspect when you're talking about where your money is located and how you have that saved. What are the attributes of that? Meaning, what are the positives and what are the negatives? So the negatives are, is it taxable? So again, how much can you spend? You can't spend all the money if it's taxable. So if you have $100,000 and some of that is taxable because it's qualified and the IRS has the rights to that money to a certain extent, you don't have $100,000 to spend. This becomes the issue. And understanding where your money is located. And when you're past the age of 50 and you're taking hits on your money, whether it's a 401k, IRAs, whatever you have your money established in, if there's loss that's going on, you don't have that time to recapture and then continue to gain. That becomes a major stumbling block as you get older. So understanding payout factors as well, and in terms of how much can I take out of this plan, thinking about this now versus waiting till you retire is something that it's a vitally important. And understanding these types of conversations and how these conversations need to go. Because if you're not thinking about these things and you're waiting, we talk about estate planning and people, well, you'll wait to your 50s to do estate planning. To me, that's backwards. Same thing here. If you're never thinking about how can I take money out? How much can I get out of it? How much can I get out of it? How long is it going to last? Can I make this work for me for my lifetime? Or is there a finite end because I'm taking too much out and I'm going to possibly outlive my money? These are all conversations that I think people start to think about, but they don't necessarily have. And because maybe the answer is too scary potentially because they haven't really set themselves up in a proper way because they just haven't had the maybe the guidance or help when it comes to having these types of conversations, or they're not bringing these types of things up. Who talks about this consistently with their family over what's coming up here for Thanksgiving? Do we talk about these kind of things? We might talk about what the market's doing, but we
Yeah.
don't necessarily talk about what's happening with ourselves individually because it's not something we want to talk about. Or maybe we're not comfortable letting even a sister or a mother or father or aunt or a cousin really in on what we're doing. Maybe we're not doing as well as what people perceive us to be doing. That's uncomfortable. So who's having these conversations? When are you having them, and who are you having them with? So when you reach the age of 50, I think there needs to be a shift, and maybe the shift needs to happen prior to 50. I think that may be part of the bigger problem here. Will is that people are establishing a certain age that we start having these types of conversations where maybe you should have had this all along. You had I think one of your children just said to you, you mentioned to me earlier today, talking to younger people. Well, younger people don't have money, right? Because maybe they're just starting out, but that's the problem. Are we given the proper information of what should we be doing when we're younger, when we're starting out, when we're trying to maybe build to buy a home or maybe to get married and start to have a family? All these things need to be talked about, not just saying, hey, let's just save money, but how are we saving money? And I think that might be the bigger issue here, Will, is that we put these kind of age restrictions out there in terms of when we're talking about certain things, whereas I think it needs to be opened up and we need to be talking about this much sooner rather than later.